Here's the thing. I've already made a video where I analyzed the different changes that took place in Shane and Ilya's relationship, with a specific focus on the minute ones that a lot of us most likely missed, which meant that I did cover a little bit of the Tampa Bay All Stars weekend in that video, specifically as it pertains to Shane and Ilya's time on the beach, as well as the hotel room sequence afterwards. So I'm not going to go into too much details on those, and I'll just have that video linked in the description so you can watch me go into further details on that. I also made a video last week talking about how and why Shane outsources his creative pursuits, with a specific mention on his choice for a stylist and the significance of that to him and his character growth. So I will leave that video linked in the description bar as well, just in case you haven't seen it yet. But outside of that, I really do want to dive into the events of Tampa Bay because it's one very pivotal to the turn, more positive turn that Shane and Ilya's relationship takes, especially as it pertains to the vulnerability they are willing to show each other, and also because it's such a great foreshadowing for their future together, especially with the threads we get to see come into play in the long game, which for those who are still unaware, is the second Holland book and the sixth book in the Game Changer series. Who am I kidding? I love yapping about this show and these characters. So, of course, I will keep making these videos if you would have me. Of course, before I delve into that, I would like to say a quick disclaimer about the series. These are just my own thoughts and opinions as I watch and rewatch the show, with occasional flashes of insight that pop in due to having read the books and being a lover of them as well as of a good character. However, I am not about to proclaim myself as being the absolute authority on everything, since it's important we all remember that media is meant to be enjoyed, usually through our own interpretations and personal lenses. And as long as one isn't being bigoted or an absolute asshole, I'm usually more of a shrug. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, just like I'm entitled to mine, kind of girl. So thank you all for giving me the space to yap about the show. And whilst we're at it, I would also like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that out of the way, let's come back to All Stars. Like I tend to do with this What You Missed series, I like to consider events that happened even prior to the scenes, especially when they give added context as it pertains to the emotional state of these characters. And this definitely applies to the All Stars weekend as well. Before it kicks off, Ilya has been dealing with all the emotions that came with his vulnerability during the tuna melt scene, and Shane not only leaving, but also shortly afterwards getting into a very, very public relationship with Rose Landry, which is important to note. I've also done a video about the significance of the break and that relationship, especially with regards how it opens up Ilya's fears and also worries that he cannot be public in his affection or desire for Shane, as Shane gets to be with Rose, since that is the more acceptable heterosexual relationship that society approves of. Now, all of this already has Ilya feeling raw and also feeling just a tad bit inadequate. The inadequacy is important, especially as it pertains to his character, which is why the scene before the All Stars weekend kicks off is so important. I'm specifically referring to him being with Svetlana. Like I said earlier, we established that Ilya is feeling a bit, oh, who are we kidding? A lot emotionally vulnerable and raw. So, of course, he has Svetlana with him. She's been his childhood friend, probably the one person who's known him the longest and loved and cared for him unconditionally for that period of time. And so, with her, he's seeking that comfort, which we see physically expressed when he lays down across her thighs in that scene. But I will get to that in a moment. Back to Ilya's feeling of inadequacy. This bleeds into the scene, but in a direction that is separate from everything that's twisted in him and just how desperately he wants Shane and believes he can't have him anymore. And it's juxtaposed perfectly well with the conversation he has with Svetlana. Svetlana, who loves hockey. Her father was a goalie. Her best friend is one of the the generational players. So, of course, she loves the game, but she also loves her country and her countrymen and is feeling very slighted that the Russian players, who are quite capable and way talented than their peers, are being shafted by the league, which is mostly dominated by North American players. Now, this is not me attempting to say that what the European players had to deal with is in any way comparable to the players of color or even queer players within the league. But from Svetlana's comment and her miffed response, it is clear that she's someone who focuses on all the teams that have Russian players and is pissed on their behalf when they get shafted for other players who aren't necessarily as good as them, but are more pleasing and palatable and marketable to their audience, which makes them way more likable to the general market. It might seem silly and inconsequential, especially because this, of course, doesn't directly apply to Ilya Rozanov, who we all know is a generational talent, and no coach is going to be dumb enough to shaft him for a weaker player. But not all the Russian players in the league are Ilya, not all of them get the same treatment. And what that would then mean is that they would play and give their all, yes, but it's still going to be weighed against their own feelings of inadequacy, of feeling like they aren't enough, that the league and quite a significant number of teams within the league would rather choose to promote a mediocre player over them. And I don't know about you, but it's a great way to explore that whilst also keeping in mind that it's a similar feeling to what Ilya is experiencing in that moment, not with regards his career, but with regards his love life. And of course, when Ilya asks if Svetlana considers Shane mediocre as well, she immediately rejects that, affirms that Shane Hollander really is that god tier player, and also brings up the fact that he's good looking. Even side eyeing Ilya when he tries to play in her face about it. It's a great subtle way that the show once again gives yet another clue that Svetlana is very much aware of Ilya's feelings or at least desire for Shane, and she's not judging him and is instead encouraging him, even though Ilya can't tell at the moment. And then there's the bit with her suggesting that Ilya play wing to Shane center, which mild spoilers. And I would just say that if you don't want to know anything about the long game, just put me on mute until the spoiler warning tag is off your screen. But as I was saying, her suggestion that Ilya play wing to Shane center is meant to be a great foreshadowing or not to the very important question that will arise in Unrivaled, which is the third Olanov book and the seventh book in the Game Changer series, FYI. But yes, the question is, now that both Shane and Ilya are going to be playing for the Centers, what with Shane signing with them at the end of the long game? Fuck the Voyagers slash Metros, by the way. Always. Fuck them always. But yeah, with them both playing on the same team, there are only two options left. They can either play on different lines, which from a gameplay standpoint isn't bad at all because it strengthens the overall force of the team. But on the other hand, in a power play, it makes sense to have the two beasts on the ice at the same time. And for that to be able to happen, Ilya would have to play wing to Shane center. It would be yet another thing that Ilya has to give up willingly in order to be with Shane. This time around, in order to play with him on the ice, because like Sveta says, Shane can't play center, only Ilya can, which means the onus is on Ilya to compromise. And then there's the bit with him lying across her thighs, which I mentioned earlier, and it's such a great way to further emphasize how vulnerable Ilya is feeling in that moment because Veta just dropped the bombshell reminder on him that Rose would most likely be accompanying Shane to the All Stars weekend, which means he's about to be in for a world of hurt. It's such a fantastical acted scene with Ilya so desperate for comfort, even as he hides it all beneath the pain in his eyes, and Sveta is offering it up to him unconsciously, though it might have been. And then we get to Florida. Ilya is on pin and needles, eager to see Shane, but also terrified to see Shane because what if Shane shows up with Rose fucking Landry? And sure enough, Shane does show up, which lights him in one breath, but then has him depressed in the next because Shane shows up all dressed up, looking nothing like stereotypical Shane. Clearly, it's a change, a new one that happens to coincide with the time period of him dating Rose fucking Landry. And now Ilya is wondering whether or not Shane is about to tell him just how serious their relationship has gotten. It's the bit in the book that I really enjoy. Us getting to be in Ilya's head in the moment as he's happy, but also terrified because the last time he saw Shane outside of them being together on the ice, Shane was hustling out of his apartment and now he's here looking good, in love, maybe, and about to break his heart. Maybe Ilya Rozanov was going through a lot in that moment, and you can see it in the shifting of his eyes. The same can be said for Shane as well. He's aware that he did not undo everything that came after the tuna melt well. He's aware that he bailed after a moment of vulnerability, rare vulnerability that Ilya most likely worked his way up to showing him. And so he's wondering if that still counts, if that moment still exists, if he's blown it, if things can go back to the way they were before. I know I snark about his choice to wear a suit jacket when it's hot as hell in Florida at that time of the year. But at the same time, if we consider the moment at what it means for Shane, one could say that the suit jacket was him putting on armor, bracing himself for whatever comes next. Like with Ilya, this is their first time interacting with each other outside of being on the ice together since everything went down. And Shane also wants and hopes to repair things, but is terrified and cautious and wary and worried about it not going how he desperately wants it to. So, what if the jacket is symbolic of Shane arming himself, ready to hopefully see if there is a spark, if there's a potential, a possibility of regaining what he had almost lost? And if there isn't, it's a way to brace himself and protect himself. Otherwise, you might not agree with me, but that is how I see it. We then have the moment of both of them testing the waters. The banter is there. They circle each other slow and easy, chatting about their rivalry that the league has stoked for so long. But now they get to play on the same team for the first time in their career. Ilya brings up the question that has been burning at the top of his mind. Did Shane come alone or did he bring someone else? Shane mentions his parents not being able to come. It doesn't even occur to him to mention Rose at this point because at this point she's a non-issue romantically for him. But of course, Ilya doesn't know that and he's still waiting with bated breath but not wanting to say anything because then it becomes him putting himself out there, making it obvious, and he can't deal with that hurt again. Shane tests the waters right back, wondering if maybe it's too late. Is it possible Ilya has brought someone with him, someone important enough to be a part of their world during their break that they get in between the season? Ilya is like, nope. Ilya's nope is such a relief at this point, and you can see Shane's soft exhale. It's beautiful, brilliantly acted work. And of course, there's Vonnie's exuberance, which has both of them most likely thinking, not the time. And I'm not going to lie, I cackled. Like, I love my boy, but God's he's so oblivious and misses the signs so much. Reminds me of when they were in Russia and he was unwittingly talking about how hard and brave it must be to be a gay athlete in Russia to two gay athletes in Russia. Vonnie, never change. But back to Ilya and Shane. Ilya mentioned Shane's outfit. His exact words were, "You look pretty," which immediately brings to mind his words at the CCM shoot, which was when this thing between them first started. And it's such a great way to subtly hint to both the audience and to Shane himself that yes, Ilya is still interested, and yes, he still believes Shane to be very pretty. It's marvelous. And then Shane mentions that he hired a stylist. And whilst I think character wise, it's a great way to indicate Shane's decision to be more in control of his life and his choices and be more comfortable with them therein, as I addressed more in depthly in the Shane outsourcing his creative decisions videos. But there's also two things I would like to add to the point. One, it is quite clear that one of the reasons why Shane is doing this as well is because he's always admired Ilya's sense of style and the freedom and sense of play he has with his clothes. It's what he hints at when he tells him that even though he couches it as, oh, some of the guys have great taste in clothes, but not you. We and Ilya knew that when Shane says some of the guys, he really does mean Ilya Rozanov. But also, I found it very interesting that in the time Shane dated Rose, superstar, mega actress Rose Landry, who he followed everywhere and was photographed with extensively, to Ilya's horror and dismay and the pain of his poor dear foot. I found it interesting that not once in all that time did he make the decision to be more stylish whilst with Rose. But the minute he decides that fuck it, he wants Ilya back in his life, he decides to hire a stylist and overhaul his wardrobe. Because when they were dating, Rose probably tried her damnedest to get his ass to go shopping with her, and he refused. And of course, there's the pool side, which I think we've watched a shit ton of times. And there's most likely nothing any one of us have missed, but I did see a Reddit comment. I can't remember the Redditor who posted it. I'm sorry, but they mentioned that Shane most likely doesn't have any boring poolside book to read. And my man was most likely there just to see Ilya wet and half naked in the pool. And you know what? That is a head canon I'm sticking with. Thank you. And then there's the foreshadowing with us getting to see the effortless way in which Shane and Ilya get to play with each other on the ice on the same team, how in sync they are, how unstoppable they are, how unrivaled they are. See what I did there? Now, I'm not going to rehash things with them by the beach because I already did that in another video, like I said. But I do want to reiterate that it's very important to their relationship that Shane is the one who outrightly asks Ilya at that moment, for his room number. It's also yet another little way in which Shane is trying to make up for how things played out and him having caught Ilya rough. This is him making it clear and obvious that he wants to see Ilya, he wants to be with him again. And unlike the previous times when it's usually Ilya who asks for or who pushes, it is Shane who offers first. It's pretty significant. It's equally as significant that in the hotel room, we get to see a direct parallel yet again with how things first started between them. In the hotel room after the CCM shoot, Ilya is the one who makes his way over to Shane's room and he's the one who initiates their first sexual encounter and holds space for Shane's vulnerability in those moments because it's a first for him and he was logically quite stressed about it. This time around, it is Shane that makes his way over to Ilya's hotel room and is the one that initiates their first time being fully vulnerable with each other. Shane comes out to Ilya. Shane expresses that he likes him a lot. Ilya gets to be vulnerable, tells Shane about his mother having died, his father's dementia, his fears about him not being able to go back to Russia once he allows himself to fully pursue what's always existed between them once he allows them to become more. And then he breaks down in tears in Shane's arms. And it's just, God's, it is so lovely and heartfelt and heart wrenching all at the same time. And then we have the aftermath, Shane leaving, and they get to call each other by their first names without the startled reaction that followed the last and only time Ilya had attempted it. And it's such a full circle moment and a great way, narratively speaking, to wrap things up with the weekend as it resolves some of the tension that had built with the tuna scene that happened prior to that. And I don't know about you, but gods, I loved the Florida All Stars week. Absolutely stunning work all around, and it gives us so much depth and growth for these characters. Brilliant work. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might potentially be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.